Today, our topic is your soul. This is, I don't use this word much because it's kind of a loaded term. It's just freighted with so much, but just think of whatever you call within you that does have spiritual experiences. I'm going to try to take out the systematic theology and the questions of medieval scholasticism and really just hold up the garden variety version of soul. You know, what inspires you? I think we can remember Deidre talking about the people on her whale watching trips who had never seen an animal that huge before, and that that moment. Did you see that? Anything that takes your breath away and awakens you from your ordinary expectations. Some random act of kindness that touches your heart. Something surprisingly beautiful, like a flower or a piece of art or a song. Or it can be just drifting into a profound sense of peace and serenity, where everything is simply okay. All of these contain some sense of an inspiring power behind what we actually see or hear. The Lord's Prayer, which we talked about last time, is a journey through different levels of consciousness. And this journey is a plan for your soul. So we're going to talk about, well, what are these levels in terms of what do they identify with? What's their intention? What's their purpose? And then given that, what do they pay attention to? And this is a plan. This prayer is a plan for our souls, not to make our body look better or to have a sparkling personality. And we did involve and consult two other traditions, which are like children from the same source, from the same truth, which never changes. Now, they all look a little different because they arise in different historical periods and in different cultures and for different purposes. We're going to look today at body and mind, the science of body and mind, and then what these three traditions have to say, have to tell us about the spirit and soul. Everybody experiences soul growth differently, certainly release from suffering, but also all the positive experiences I just talked about. The soul is a noun, but the soul is not a thing. It's a flow of consciousness. It's a process. It's as ordinary as today. And so my purpose today is to try to present a frame of reference that place all of these experiences in a plan on a journey so they just don't remain isolated and chaotic. And this is just my opinion, is sort of a testimony of my journey, my faith statement. Yours may be different, take what you like and leave the rest. So here we are in an ordinary scene, but I want to use it to talk about different levels of consciousness. First, the child. The child is focused on the toy. His intention, though it may not be conscious to him, is his developmental task. He has to learn about this new world that he's living in. And he's fascinated by anything new with very abundant attention. He throws his whole being into this project. And his fate, in a way, depends on how well he does this task, on his relationship to the object of his attention. You know, you get what you concentrate on in life. The woman's purpose is to mother the child. So she's fascinated by anything new that this child does. And she has also another level of consciousness. Her consciousness is relational. It's kind of higher in that it's sort of more complex and is organized around being of service to others. Now, she also has inside her, as we all do, an observer who sees the woman identifying as a mother in this moment. In other moments, she may be identified as being a friend or a sister or a wife or a professional. But the observer is not just observes. It's just interested in being realistic. What is it exactly that I see? What is the truth of this person without judgment? And we have another level called the witness, who's not looking back toward the self or down toward the self, looking up to being united or reunited with God or with a higher, even higher consciousness. So we're going to try to look at what the Lord's Prayer and the 12 steps and the chakras say about, well, what is the soul? What is that? What's the guide to having spiritual experiences? And I'm going to skip to the end of the prayer and the end of everything to clarify what's the goal. Now, the goal is atonement. It's sort of being at one with God. And we have examples in history. The Hindus call them avatars. It's people who are self-realized beings who just arrive at this state and then live there. Certainly Buddha would be one. Christians call Christ the Son of God. It's as the manifestation of a deity here on earth. This is what God or enlightenment looks like from a lower level of consciousness. The Prophet Muhammad, last century, Meher Baba, some people would say today Amaji would be exemplars. But they are not our goal. That's their experience. That's them. They show us important things. But for us, it's the process, being on track. The process is our goal. Now, just like the Lord's Prayer, it assumes that you will get there. You follow the steps, you will have a spiritual awakening. It's kind of a promise. And I have noticed that people who have spiritual awakenings tend to dedicate their lives to being of service to others, to carrying their particular message. The crown chakra at the very top of the head is the one that opens us up to the energy of the universe, connects it with our own energy, and where our life's purpose resonates with the purpose of life itself. And living in a state of bliss because we are at peace with everything, because we identify with everything and everybody. And where the fate of my personal self, with a small s, is the same as identified with the fate of all of us, with all selves, the universal self with a capital S. Now, I'm not a realized being, but so this is an article of faith. I'm taking this on faith that this is where we're going. I may not ever reach it. I may not ever have the experience, but I'm certainly not going to plan on never having it. I might someday, I might today. But still, I wonder, what will the process be like? The Lord's Prayer just ends with this big thing, and like, well, how am I actually going to get there? So let's just take a moment as an aside and look at what science is finding today. I think it's always worthwhile to consider science. And we have the mind and the brain. We experience the mind, the science studies the brain, and the field is neurotheology, where they are studying what are the neural correlates of spiritual or religious experiences. There's no disagreement between science and spirituality. It's just that science is focused on what can be measured, verified, and us as a spirit, the soul, is really focused on, well, what is my experience? What am I experiencing directly? So the studies take people who are like monks or meditators and ask them to recall, get in touch with some transcendental experience. Could be religious, maybe not necessarily. And they find that the common element is reduced activity in the IPL. That's the one thing out of all the people and all the studies that they have in common. So what is the IPL? I'm so glad you asked, because I have a picture. There it is. Very interesting. It stands for, this will not be on the test. It stands for inferior parietal lobule. I don't know what that means, but it's one of the last areas of the brain to develop, and it's one of the last areas of the brain to mature. It doesn't really mature until most of us are in our mid-30s. But it's at the intersection of the audio and visual and somatosensory cortices. It's sort of like the grand central station of the brain. And what they found, it might be counterintuitive, but when you have a transcendental experience, what they find is activity here goes down. And I think one finding for me is that transcendental experiences or enlightenment, it's not magic. It's not an otherworldly or an imaginary or a permanently mysterious, something permanently mysterious. It's a normal capacity of the human brain. We all have it to a greater or lesser degree. Still, I wonder, so what's the process to do this? Okay. Well, the more I can dial down this activity, the more likely I'm open to having the experience. I say that's my conclusion because science just finds correlations, doesn't find causation here. But I'm placing my bets on trying to quiet the brain. Now, let's go back up again. We went to the very end. Let's go back up to where we were. And both the Lord's Prayer and the 12 steps make a big thing about forgiveness. Human experience is diverse, but they really take a big stand, a lot to say about forgiveness, which I'm not going to talk about here so much. That's going to come in the next talk. But the main point is, for here, the reason we're encouraged to forgive someone is not primarily so that they will forgive us. It's primarily so that God will forgive our debts. Now, you put this in the language of the chakras, it's so that we are unblocking whatever is in the way from our higher chakras to our lower chakras. It has to do with something going on with us. It's not a white beard in the sky who will come down and say, I forgive you. It's an internal process of removing obstacles to our own internal reconciliation. And once we get right with ourselves, then that's a good place to seek reconciliation with others. The Lord's Prayer says now, deliver us from evil. Well, that's a good thing because there is evil in the world. There is violence. There is injustice. It cannot be avoided. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And this kind of asks for a little help from our higher sensibilities to help us get out of evil once we're in it. Now, it's not just violence and injustice that we know about. There's a lot of evil means being separated from God, being at odds with ourselves, alienated. Sometimes I think evil is social conditioning. If it's not in a line with higher purposes, the things that everybody is doing is an environment, and you can't fight a whole environment. You need some help. What's some help? Here we are in step 10 of the 12 steps. Taking this step, taking this inventory requires some skills. And there's meditation, which I continually need. I don't know about you, but it's chaos inside here. I have the monkeys just jumping around all the time. Anything I can do to calm my brain so that I can focus on something is a basic skill. And from there, I take that skill and apply it to looking at myself, taking an inventory, getting interested in, well, what is it that I really do feel? Just to see it as it is, not to judge it, not to evaluate it, not to promote it, being open to whatever is arising without reactions. In the chakra system, this is number 5, the throat chakra. It's above the heart. And this is associated with accomplishing what needs to be done. That is thinking, talking, acting. You find your voice, find your true voice so that you can speak simply, clearly, honestly, and at the same time being mindful. It's not that easy to do. Step 11, how do we get out from evil? Stay in touch with God, okay? And the main problem in paying attention to anything really is that the mind, the lower self, the self with a small s, tends to want to take over, tends to want to say, I see it, it's mine. I see it, I take credit for it. It wants to control. And the problem is that once you control, you're attached. And once you're attached, you know the next thing that's coming is suffering. And the way I think of it is like a monkey box, a monkey trap in Southeast Asia. It's a little box, and inside the box is something the monkey wants, a piece of candy or a mango. And it has a little hole, which is just big enough for the monkey to put their paw through and grab the mango. But once they're holding on to the mango, they can't get their paw back out of the box. And being a monkey, they're trapped. And the more anxious that they become, the more tightly they hold on, even though there's a whole forest full of mangoes out there, but they're just attached to this one that they've got in their hand. That's why you need to pray only for knowledge of God's will, not another mango. Now, the next chakra is the brow chakra, or maybe even above the brows, the third eye, which is the time to let words go and just see as they are. Use your intuition. This is what really helps detaching instead of attaching. I'm just seeing it. I don't have to have it and own it. Be open to whatever arises and then let go of whatever arises. And you will come to treasure these special moments of complete stillness. They're calm and carefree. So that fleshes out a little bit more of what for me was missing in the Lord's Prayer. Oh, I see. Sorry.
Roy, are you trying to stop the screen share?
I'm trying to find my slide. There it is. Okay. So here are two readings that add some more for me. And these are readings sort of like the soul talking to the witness, encouraging the witness. Knead clay in order to make a vessel. Adapt the nothing therein to the purpose at hand, and you will have the use of the vessel. Cut out doors and windows in order to make a room. Okay, you need a door to get in and a window for light. Adapt the nothing therein to the purpose at hand, and you will have the use of the room. Thus, what we gain is something very important, yet it is by virtue of nothing that this can actually be put to use. Here's a similar idea. It's about, just it's sort of likening us to a vessel or a bowl. And just because you're a bowl doesn't mean yet that's your true nature. It doesn't mean you have to let the ego fill up the bowl all of the time with your to-do list, with entertainment, with something just to fill up the bowl. Stand aside, let another level of consciousness do it. Here's another reading from I Am That, 6 centuries later. When action is needed, action happens. The witness is not the actor. His is to be, or hers is to be aware of what is going on. His very presence, the presence is the action. The window is the absence of the wall, and it gives air and light because it is empty, empty of all mental content, of all imagination and effort. And the very absence of obstacles will cause reality to rush in. He means spiritual reality. It's not what you do, but what you stop doing that matters from the point of view of the soul. So I like this because this is the spiritual plan, and it really goes in the same way that life goes. The first half of life is about getting and having and maintaining. The second half of life is about letting go of what's not necessary, letting go of what cannot be sustained. And as we age, we become more realistic and accepting, compassionate, wiser in the ways of experience, less ambitious, more receptive to life review, and then finally letting go of that. We all have losses at the end of life, and they will leave us feeling empty. This is a spiritual opportunity. You know that over time you can befriend emptiness and that you will be filled. I'm in that, most of you know, in that strange space of having just lost a mother, and she is so present and so absent at the same time. It's like, it just feels like, I can't say this, feels like being pregnant. Feels like what I think being pregnant is like. So today we talked about your soul, which is really just experiencing deeply the spirit which is always present, that we sometimes glimpse in many ways. We can't really describe it, but you know it when you see it. We can't make it happen because effort comes from a lower level of consciousness that ultimately seeks to control. You can't earn it. You can't wait for it because you are it already. You have this capacity. What we can do is seek to remove the obstacles, empty the bowl, the obstacles that keep us from seeing it. And over time, or perhaps immediately, we become more whole, having all of ourself available. We are like a dewdrop, which has a name and it has a form. But it's when it can be clear and still, that's the necessary conditions to allow that speck of sunlight to shine through and to have others see it. Now, it's not the dewdrop that's doing it, it's the conduit for the greater sun, the sun that lights up everything. And this light is the light of all beings that everybody is part of. Amen. May it be so.